Good afternoon, Zimbabwe, and welcome to Zimbabwe Daily. My name is Yvonne Muchaka, and I do hope I find you well. This is Frank Talk with Yvonne. Just recently, we had a situation where the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education announced the 2021 school calendar, and it stands as follows. The first term, it's going to begin on the 15th of March, on Monday, and this is for exam classes. Non-exam classes are coming on from Monday, 22 March, and this term closes on Friday, 4 June 2021. So we have 8 public holidays in between the month of April and May. So they're going to take those breaks, but they are going to be largely in school for about 56 days. There are no exit weekends, and after that, we take 23 days of our vacation, and the second term begins on the 25th of June and ends on Friday, 10 September 2021. We have 2 public holidays in August, and we have no exit weekends, and we have 53 number of days that children will be in school, and then we take another 23 days of vacationing. The third term begins on Monday, 4 October, and ends Friday, 17 December 2021. There's no public holiday in this particular third term, and we will take another 23 days of vacationing, and schools open up in January of 2022 on the 10th of January. So this is a tentative calendar that the government has given to us in such a perilous season where the COVID-19 brought unpredictability in our lives, more so in the lives of students. However, today we want to talk about this case because it's an issue that has been affecting our education sector for quite a number of years. The issue to do with remunerations and etc. So we are saying with this new scenario and this new case where we are opening schools, has anything changed? Are we ready for the school openings? Are the teachers ready? I know for sure that the students are ready, and every parent out there is just saying, why not just open up the school so that these little arrows in our house can go? But yeah, so we have invited a number of guests so that we can go into this topic together, and I'll try to have my guests introduce themselves. Over to you, Samuel. May you kindly introduce yourself to our viewers?
Thank you very much. My name is Samuel. I'm a human rights activist, human rights expert, human rights defender, whatever title you need to give me. I also work with the student movement, Zimbabwe National Student Union, as the national coordinator. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Samuel. Over to you, Mr. Tekmo Mhlanga.
Hello everyone, I'm Tekmo Mhlanga, Secretary for Young Teachers in Amalgamated Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, ATUS.
Awesome, thank you. So Tekmo is standing in for the president of ATUS. That's why you see the image there. Welcome, Mr. Zunde. Can you hear us? Please introduce yourself. All right, so Mr. Zunde is having a little bit of network challenges there. Hopefully he'll be able to be with us very soon. He's coming in from the Progressive Teachers Union of Zimbabwe, PTUZ. And we have seen in the last few days, R2's PTUZ and other teacher unions writing statements, writing press releases, writing letters to the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education concerning your welfare. Would you say, Mr. Tekmo, that schools are ready for opening in this particular season?
Okay, thank you, Yvonne. I think for the first, in my first, I want to applaud the government for producing a document called Standard Opening Procedure for Safe Opening of School. In that document, I think the government have alluded most of the things that needed to be looked into before we open schools, and unfortunately, our government has not yet funded that document because if you want to look at the document, we see that there is nothing that has been done first before we open the school, and we were surprised as teachers when we see the government producing a school opening calendar, and when you want to compare and construct the school opening calendar that they have produced, and want to look at what is there in our schools, which guarantee that the schools are safe for opening, and as teachers our answers is no, because for now we want to look at the even the issues of the teachers salaries. The government has not yet uh, uh, agreed with teachers, because if you want to look at the current salaries that teachers are earning in Zimbabwe, you can see that the amount is far below the poverty datum line, and for by that it means teachers we are not ready for to go back into our classrooms while we are earning peanuts. The government have to address the issues of teachers salaries first before the rush opening of schools, because it is not it is useless for the government to say the schools have to be open, and when the parents send their children to the schools, and they find no teachers, because teachers are even for now. Let's say a teacher who teach in Musaraba now is in Harare. Uh, the salaries that he or she have get from the government can't even afford to for transport from Harare to Msarabani, and we want to also look at the issue of the student. Are they ready to go back to the in the classrooms? And if we look at that, we can see that the student first they need counseling before they go back into the classrooms, because this pandemic, if we want to look at the period at which our students were out of schools, and and now the government want to rush them to go back into our schools. Like here in town, some of the people the ghetto youth were always in the street playing some radios, and if we want to if we want to take back that kid to the classroom before a proper counseling, I think it is also useless again. And we also want to look at the how uh, this government are they providing this like sanitizers, masks for all learners, and if you find it in from our schools up to now. Some of our schools they don't have sanitizers, they don't have masks, even running waters. For example, some of the schools which are just near Harare, they don't have running waters. They don't have sanitizers, and we want to rush our people to go back into our classroom, which is unrealistic. And I also I also my final point. I also want to point on the issue of the if you third wave of COVID-19 pandemic, and if you find it the in South Africa, if they are now preparing our country also prepare for the third wave of coronavirus of this pandemic, and we want to ask these people to go back into a classroom. Are we ready for our people to go back into a classroom for just 2 weeks or for just a month, and then they'll close again after another lockdown? I think that's what I have for now.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I'm going to ask a number of questions of your presentation, because you raised the issue of counseling. Who is supposed to do the counseling really? Is it the government? Is it the parent? Is it the teacher? Who is supposed to do the counseling for these children? Mr. Tekmo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, you
Yes,
mentioned.
the counseling is supposed to be done by both teachers and parents at home, because now I can celebrate as a parent. Let me talk as a parent. I can celebrate that my tomorrow my child is going back to school, and
And we lost him. And we lost him. I'm going to come to you, Samuel, as we wait for Mr. Amtlanga to come back online. Can you tell us from the perspective of students? You've been out of school for quite a while. Those who are privileged enough have been doing online learning, and now the government says we're reopening the schools. Would you say that the students are ready?
Thank you very much for making me answer.
I think we've lost your connection there in terms of your audio. You were audible earlier on. Now we can't
Hello,
quite hear you.
can you hear me now?
It's still very low.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Is
hear you.
okay. Thank you very much.
Yvonne.
I think we need to at least applaud the government for saving the education sector, though with some reservations of some sort in terms of the government's preparedness, in terms of the aspect of looking at the safety of the student, looking at also stakeholder engagement with the relevant key stakeholders. Because currently, all these kind of reservations that are coming is all because the government has not been able to reach out to key stakeholders, the students themselves, our various unions, and parents in terms of how we can collectively uh, save the education sector. But our challenge currently goes to the safety of the child or safety of the student in terms of opening of the schools. Um, is our government prepared enough to ensure that our lecturers have got enough PEPs? Is our parents, is our children also having those PEPs like mask and stuff like that? Then we also need to address the issue of uh, what you call it, the remuneration of our teachers, who are also part and parcel of ensuring quality and equal education for everyone. So if some of these kind of issues are not addressed, then we necessarily not doing anything. We are going to have the same scenario where there is sabotage of the education sector by teachers who are not properly remunerated. Then, secondly, we would also want to understand the the COVID vaccine rollout by the government, which is actually key in terms of saving this education sector. What are they doing to students and to our teachers? So we believe that the teachers are supposed to be part of the key people or sector that needs to get vaccination. So so the government needs to be a little bit clearer in terms of saving lives, in terms of also saving education. But my argument is that we need to center our intervention on the students. We need to ensure that they've got enough PEPs, and also the aspect of the ratio, which has been discussed in brief by the government, to say the examination class is the one that is supposed to start then, but
Yeah.
still the whole process is not clearly defined. Then currently we need to ask ourselves and to go and monitor the situation in our schools. Are those standard operating procedures offered by the government in terms of saving the education sector still, are they in force? Like right now, do they have what the PEPs? Do they have got the necessary aspect for them to reopen schools? So it's good that schools are open, but there are many issues that needs to be addressed.
Indeed, there are so many issues as you have highlighted, and I'm sure we're going to go into that. The as we are doing this conversation, I'm hearing more of the government needs to do this, the government needs to do that, the government needs to do this. Now, what is the role of all of us? What is our role in that? Why should the government be the one to ensure that every learner has got PPE? Where is the parent? Where is the community in all of that? How is the government going to ensure that every teacher has got the PPEs? How can it do that? How can it do that? I think for me that is where I have questions, because we seem to be loading it upon the government. And the question is, who is the government? We need these schools open because we've got children who need to be back in school. Is it the prerogative not on me, on the parent, to begin to talk to my child? I need to ready my kids for school. Should I wait upon the government to do that? I don't know, maybe it has become norm for us to be like, government needs to do A, B, C, D, but what is it that we need to do in the rural communities? Mr. Take More, what is it that you're putting in place? The standard operation procedures have been given to you. What are you doing about them? Do you now wait upon government again to do something over those issues that they have outlined in the SOPs?
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yes.
you.
Yeah, at first I want to respond by saying in the most of our rural schools here in Zimbabwe, if you can see some of the schools in Musarabani, for example, in Mashingo, some district in Mashingo. These are schools. If you want to look at the structures of these school classroom blocks in these schools, it will tell you a lot about how it will tell you a lot about the background of the student learning in these particular schools, and these are the same schools that we expect to adhere to some COVID-19 restrictions, like. For the first, the government is yes, of course, the government is responsible for the safety of our children during the school time, because when a parent sent his or her student to the school. The parent will be assuming that everything is being taken care of, because since the government has said the school have to be opened. So we want to look at those schools. Are they have enough PPEs for both learners and teachers in those schools? And we also want to look at the other things about this COVID-19 and the second term opening of schools. Is another. The government is saying in some of the gathering, like the funeral, in funerals, people should have 30 people, maximum of 30 people per funeral. In some other gathering, like churches, they said 50. And if you want to look at our teacher people ratio in our classroom, as the government addresses the issues of teacher people ratio, because in some of our schools we have a classroom of more than 80 people in one classroom. Because if you want to look at these schools in Chatikobo, they have they only have one grade 1 classroom. We want to look at the grade 1. The grade 1, are they able to maintain social distancing during the lesson, during the school time? And that's where the government have to be responsible for. Is the government if they construct more classrooms in our schools, so that we know when when we go back to our classrooms, we are adhering to COVID-19 social distancing, and our classrooms teacher people ratio are realistic. So as teachers, that's where we raise our concern that the government who's supposed to recruit more teachers, construct more classrooms.
Right.
That's why most of the time we always talk about education equalization funding. We look at some of the schools in Chimanimani, some of the schools in Mwenez, they've been destroyed by rainfall, and the government is saying we have to go back and open the schools again. Where are people, where are the students going to learn in? Because some of the structures, they have been destroyed by cyclone. In Chipinga there was cyclone, in Mwenez there was a lot. Some of the schools, they have been destroyed. Some of the, even the roads to schools in Chirez, the bridge, they have been eroded by this rain. So if the government, if our government put into consideration to all of these things.
Right. Right. So indeed, structures have been destroyed in other parts of the country, and the standards are not at the levels that all of us would want them to be. But what should we then do? Should we stop learning because the structures are not yet fully in place? Should we stop putting measures as a community, as a nation, to make sure that our schools are reopened? Thank you so much for coming through. Blessing. Sa Shikiro, you say, I have a child going for Form 1. Registration is too dear. Well, for how long are schools going to be open for this term? So, according to the information that has been released, our first term is going to be from 15 March for our exam classes, 22 March for non-exam classes, up to the 4th of June 2021. So we have 56 number of days in school for our children. Patients Mavunga, you say government should provide for the schools. I think that is the call that our leader, Mr. Mhlanga, has, and continue to be making, that the government is responsible and should make sure that it provides for the things that are needed in the school. True caller, the government should provide people PPE and must make sure the schools are safe. Yes, thank you so much for that contribution. And Lucky, you say, I don't think we're ready to open schools. Rural areas, please don't do that. All right. So I'll come to you, Samuel, in your engagements with other students from other universities. I know you're coming from the Zimbabwe National Students Union. What is it that the students are saying concerning the reopening of schools, exams, and all that? Okay, we seem to have lost Samuel there. So we're just looking at what the Ministry of Primary and Secondary School has done. They produced what they call the standard operation procedure. So the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, with technical support from the Ministry of Health and Childcare, has developed standard operating procedures meant to guide senior and middle management, school level leadership, teachers, learners, and all stakeholders on how to conduct business in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. These SOPs provide clear and actionable guidance for safe operations through the prevention, early detection, and control of COVID-19 in schools and other educational facilities. It is also important to ensure care is taken to avoid stigmatizing students and staff who may have been exposed to the virus. And these were dispatched to the schools, explaining the operation. So the Secretary's circular speaks to all relevant stakeholders that they should acquaint themselves with the SOPs as they contain provisions that are mandatory. Mr. Tekmo Mhlanga, can you still hear me?
Yes, you can go, you can proceed. I can hear you.
Okay, awesome. Now, we had earlier on, you mentioned the issue that teachers should get the COVID-19 vaccine. Are teachers ready to take on the COVID-19 vaccine? If you are given the vaccine today, are the teachers willing to get the vaccine? Mr. Tekmo, you're on mute, please.
Hello. Yes. On the issue of vaccination, vaccination must be voluntary, and the government must provide a schedule for this vaccination. When are they going to take place in this district? This so that those who feel that they need the vaccination will be available for the vaccination.
Okay, awesome. So it is the government that needs to come up with a schedule for vaccination because all right. Samuel, are students in universities willing to get the COVID-19 vaccine? And you were also talking about the learners, where they are at the moment. Are they ready to be opening as well? And yeah, I would want to also see your face as you make your contribution. There you go. Thank
Uh,
you.
Thank you. I think many people are ready to take the vaccine, but
Okay, we've lost your volume there again.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
I think many learners are prepared to take the vaccine, though there is need to have much education pertaining the issue of the vaccination. There are various issues that are being raised in terms of the current vaccination, but still there's need to have serious education work in our colleges outside just educating the students on the issue of the vaccine. It will also help them to also articulate the issue of the vaccination process procedures, and its use to parents, to their grandparents, as the key vehicle for that. So I think there's need to have that much serious advocacy work in terms of the vaccination process. But I also
Right.
think there is also need of bringing learners to be part and parcel of the whole process, of the whole value chain, in terms of monitoring the distribution of vaccine, the aspect of corruption, the access of abuse in the whole matrix in terms of access to vaccination, by also serving as citizens and actually as students. So I think there's need to have that collective approach in terms of ensuring that education in terms of vaccination is available, and the students also become like the vehicle of teaching their parents, their grandchildren. But I also need to highlight the aspect of corruption in the whole process. The whole
Right.
process needs to be open and transparent enough so that the government will effectively push that agenda of ensuring access to health for everyone. But let it be so that the process in itself needs to take cognizance of the students currently when they are opening, so that it actually serves the whole process of following the World Health Organization guidelines in terms of the PEP, in terms of number of people in classrooms, and all key elements in that regard. But I also
Right.
need to highlight that the right to education need to be available to everyone, despite one's background. And I actually also think this also exists in terms of the vaccine rollout. It must not cease to make to discriminate anyone, whether you come from a rural or urban setup, and whether you are from church A or from church B. It must be something that is able to be accessed by everyone. Then it also goes to to our education systems, that the government needs to scale up the issue of data, or that access to data for students, or to each and every aspect of visual learning, the aspect of electronic learning becomes key. But with the current setup, our government is not putting enough resources within serving the education sector currently to ensure that each and every student right now needs to have his own laptop or an electronic gadget to ensure that you can easily learn from home, or you can learn within a building setup. So we need a government. Why we consider that the aspect of serving the education sector goes to the government. The government has got that obligation as duty bearers to ensure that they make access to health and access to education accessible to each and every Zimbabwean. despite what I consider, whether you are poor or you are rich, you are from part A or you are from part B. So those whole things actually resonate to a government that is able to engage with its stakeholders. Currently,
Mm,
they need to engage the teachers' unions in order to save the education sector. They need to engage the students themselves in order to save the education sector. You can't have a full buy-in of giving the lot on a student, whilst we have got a government where we pay our tax to ensure that they address all these key issues. But let it be known to our government that they need not to put command elements in terms of addressing the education sector. Right now, they
mm,
need to be clearer to say, within our budget framework, we have saved the education sector with these kind of amounts. And even the rollout, we have put such amount in terms of rolling out the vaccination process. And let's
mm,
also the input from teachers to also know what is going where, how, and who is going to get what and how. All these questions need to be clear and open. But if you have got a government that just comes up and say that this is our calendar without also taking cognizance of the stakeholders, then
mm,
there's no social contract there. So let this platform also reach out to our policy players out there, that they need to engage all relevant stakeholders. They need to educate our citizens pertaining the issue of the vaccination. They also need to
mhm,
ensure that our health players, our experts in this regard, also fully monitor the whole process. But the whole process currently is a challenge because the quality assurance in our process, where our country tops the charts in terms of corruption, it makes
mm.
also have many people have lack of confidence in the government intervention or equally the vaccination. So there's need to do much processes to ensure that there's a full social contract between the citizens and the government currently in serving the education sector. Thank you.
Mm. Social contract, indeed. And I think that has been destroyed over the years because of the way that we've done things. Vimbai Juro, thank you so much for coming through. Don't force people to vaccinate, please. One must volunteer. Thank you very much. Indeed, that is a very valid point, and I'm sure the government has been clear that this is a voluntary exercise. The question is, are the teachers a priority as frontline workers, in as much as it's a voluntary process, but is the government putting in place measures to ensure that these teachers are also catered for? Thank you so much, St. Francis Chidavayans. You say there hasn't been adequate information dissemination by the government on the COVID-19 vaccine to dispel myths and misconceptions. We are definitely not ready for schools to reopen, and unfortunately, there's a tendency by the authorities to force children to be vaccinated. Munozongoona vana kubva kuchikoro vabaiwa. There have been cases before of students being injected at school, and they were not even aware of what they were injected. This is a very serious issue that St. Francis raises there, Samuel, the issue of children being forced to get vaccinated at school. Hanzi munozongoona vana vakubva kuchikoro vabaiwa, and they don't even know what injection they have been given. Do you think we're likely to see such a scenario where our children are forced to take a COVID vaccine? I know that this one has been said not for children under 18 years, so there's unlikely to be such a scenario. But maybe in universities, do you foresee a situation where students are going to be forced to take the vaccine just because if you want to write an exam, for example, if you don't have a if you're not vaccinated, then you may pose a danger to us. Do you foresee such a scenario?
There may not be that open kind of scenarios, but imagine when you need to travel from a point A to point B, somehow they would need that vaccination card. So, in one way or the other, it may not necessarily get one be forced to get a vaccination, but in some way they will be trying to say that you can't travel from one place to the other without vaccination. So you would find many people will actually get vaccinated in the process. But like
Mm.
what you said, the idea is not to force, but it's actually to get voluntary participation of citizens to get vaccinated. But there are a lot of issues in terms of that kind of process, like the unforeseeable aspect that probably you can't go to a certain country when you don't have got a vaccination. Then with our country, where
Mm.
it's not clear whether we are going to ensure the full vaccination of the whole population, it may be so that the government may not, they may actually take the voluntary approach, even if they may need to do a command element in terms of forcing individuals to get
Right.
vaccinated. The question is, they, with the way things are, like the small donations, the what, I don't think it will cater the greater population of Zimbabweans. So
Right.
I don't see in any case like them forcing anyone. They'll
Mm.
actually want a few individuals because they don't have got the capacity. But I think we need to ensure that at least each and every citizens get vaccinated in order to save our health of our nation. But there's
Mm.
need to have transparency in the whole process. There's need to have our confidence in our health system, which currently doesn't exist because of the dilapidation of the whole broader health education kind of system. But there's need to have much more advocacy work, which actually goes to government, parliament, and all relevant players to ensure that at least many people understand what it means to actually get vaccinated. It actually
Mm.
also dispel the myths that are also associated, and also giving the citizens the right to question. I think that's what is needed.
Right. Definitely, we need to do something so that we get our nation in a different zone. Look, I know a lot of you have got concerns, especially with the vaccine, and I think there've been concerted effort to ensure that our population is educated on what is happening around there, and as what St. Francis has said, that adequate information needs to go out there, even with our students, even with our teachers and stuff like that. And indeed, we are not ready on the ground to open up, because as we have seen, a dysfunction in one area causes a dysfunction in all the other institutions. And this is where we are facing a challenge as a nation, because what guarantees that when we open the schools, things will be able to flow smoothly? We're just looking at the standard operating procedures, a summary of it. Um, this reads: the standard operation procedures guide the day-to-day operations of all registered government, non-government schools, and independent colleges. The SOPs provide guidelines to school on the preparations that need to be made for the reopening of schools and the procedures to follow when schools are open. All relevant stakeholders should acquaint themselves with the SOPs, as they contain provisions that are mandatory. The SOPs will be reviewed as and when it is necessary. Activities to be undertaken by schools. All schools are obliged to do the following activities. Number one, ensure the personal protective equipment is in place in adequate quantities. So it is the responsibility of the school to ensure that it has its numbers correctly. If the procurement is going to be done through government, then they need to make sure that they have got adequate information so that they have the PPEs in place in adequate quantities. Number two, appoint a gender balanced team of school health coordinators. So, school health coordinators are going to be those people who are ensuring, as the children enter the school premises, they are sanitized, the temperature checks are done, and they're going to be constantly monitoring the children. If there's someone who is not well, they're the ones who take the responsibility and make sure that the children are in safer places, as they call on the COVID-19 task forces. The schools should ensure that they train school health coordinators, teachers, deputy heads, and heads of schools. Everybody needs to know what needs to be done, where, how, and why. They need to conduct regular COVID-19 awareness sessions for everyone in the school, including school parents' assemblies. So the school has to make sure that it's constantly conversating with their students as well as the parents, so that they maintain a healthy environment for the learners and for themselves. Disinfect school premises, hostels, and sanitize frequently touched surfaces. This is a must. Even in our homes, we are saying we need to be disinfecting and regularly clean the school environment regularly. Provide infrared thermometers and ensure screening of every person that enters the school. The school is obliged to provide infrared thermometers. I think these are the issues that have been raised by our guest from R2s, who said that most rural schools are already struggling on their own. They don't even have the infrastructure. What more to be able to acquire the relevant equipment for this exercise. Designate a holding bay for any learner, member of staff, or visitor identified. You should visit some of our rural schools and you will begin to imagine the task that they have ahead of them just to designate a holding bay. If they are learning under a tree, imagine them actually designating a holding bay. Display the contact details for the nearest healthcare facility or team. So this is a must. Provide litter bins for every class and at all strategic areas. This is general knowledge. I hope the government begins to take the steps to ensure that these schools adequately funded in order for them to have some of these little things. I mean, beans. But for them to remind, it means that most of our schools have not been able to do that. Most of our government schools provide head washing facilities for every class and a washing station at every entry point. Relevant, again, government really needs to step up because our schools are already struggling to provide even a basic bucket. So they need to ensure that this is done. Ensure the availability of liquid soap and or hand sanitizers at every entry point. The students have said government is taking taxes from people, so it needs to ensure that these things are in place. We have an already overburdened population, and getting some of these seemingly mundane and small things can actually be a very torrid task. Enforce the wearing of face masks by all pupils, staff, and visitors. This is another seemingly small task, but it is very, very vital and very important. We have seen, right from government, we have seen people wearing their masks like this. We have seen others wearing their masks like this. We have seen others who wear their masks. I don't know if it's a funny cloth that they'll be using, but just the simple things. How will a child be able to tell their teacher your mask is not properly sitting on? So we also need to train our kids to be assertive when it comes to those issues. Limit visitors to the school to only those that are essential. Maintain social physical distancing at the school, including in the hostels at all times. Now, that is going to be a challenge, especially with our government schools that Mr. Mhlanga talked about, the issue to do with teacher students ratios. Sometimes we have a class of 80 students. Now, how do you maintain a social distance in a 20 square foot room with 70 kids? So that is an issue that really needs to be seriously considered. Stand guided by the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Recreation, authorized sport codes. So again, the issues to do with the types of sport that should be played needs to be considered. Ensure there's no sharing of equipment or utensils by learners and teachers. This is another point. Maintain an accurate contact register. which is very important. Keep doors and windows open to ensure adequate ventilation. I'm sure most rural schools don't have this problem because they're literally learning under the trees. Create and regularly update a social register or database for both learners and teachers, as well as display information, education, and communication materials at all strategic places. So it is those little banners that say, maintain social distance, sanitize your hands, wear your face mask. Those IEC materials need to be plastered around the schools so that children, the teachers, and all the essential workers are constantly reminded that we are still in the fix. COVID-19 has not entirely gone. The SOPs are mandatory and should be adhered to at each and every school for the safety and protection of learners, staff, and visitors. The school timetable must be prepared in a manner that ensures that the SOPs are not compromised. All stakeholders must embrace this new normal as the ministry forges ahead with its mandate of providing inclusive, relevant, and quality education. For further clarity, please read this circular together with the standard operating procedures herein attached. So this is the secretary's circular where much information has been shared. Tawina Becky Bumira, you say let's not force teachers to vaccinate. Please, those who want to vaccinate must go on. Indeed, I think we all agreed. And thank you so much, Tafazgo Aliyah, for saying thank you so much, Yvonne, for taking your time to listen to people. You're a gem. God bless you. You're a Rome. Oh, sweet. I feel so blessed right now. Thank you so much, Tafazgo Aliyah, for that comment. I am blushing. Does it show? All right. So Samuel, as we close this conversation, I think so many issues have been raised, and indeed, I'm sure we've also managed to get to you so that the right information gets to you. Schools are opening, guys. We all need our kids to go to school, but we also need them to be safe. We can't afford another year of not learning for our kids. So it's really important that we all play a fundamental role. And the clarion call continues to go to government to take an active approach to things. Corruption has no place. The looting, says the song by Hopo Shungono, whilst our structures are suffering. So, in closing, Samuel, what would be your advice to government right now? They've taken this step that schools need to be opening, and in the next 1 to 2 weeks before we officially start, what needs to be put in place? What must be done in order to level the field?
Yeah, thank you very much, Yvonne. I think the government has got an uphill task to ensure that they engage all stakeholders to participate in serving our education sector.
Samuel, your volume.
Oh, thank you very much, Yvonne. uh,
Okay, great.
Thank you very much, Yvonne. I think the government has got a serious task to ensure that they serve the education sector by ensuring all stakeholders being part and parcel of the whole process and value chain in terms of vaccination, in terms of actually talking about policy in general. So I think they need to fully engage its stakeholders. They also need to be open and be realistic in terms of their intervention so that at least other players, non-government organizations, they know where to also participate in also helping, and other donor agencies will be able to assist where we are seriously lacking. So there's need of ensuring an openness in terms of the various intervention. Where they can't, they have to fully tell the citizen that in
Right.
this response we can't, or we can save quota of our population in terms of service delivery or whatever intervention that they need to put across, so that we are able to know how other players can also engage into our country. And I think it also goes to our private players. They also need to come on board, just like our own Strive Masiwa has been critical in terms of mobilizing vaccine to the whole of Africa. So it's also
Yes.
up to most of our own entrepreneurs, our own private players, to also come on board and save our education sector. And it also goes to us. We also need to be responsible enough so that we don't spread the COVID. We don't spread COVID to our fellow colleagues and friends. A lot need to be done, but we need a government that is responsible. We need a government that understand that they are servant leaders rather than command cadres. They need to rethink about their policy formulation and implementation, taking
Mm,
away the command kind of implementation of things, but to actually get to the promises that they did in 2017, 2018 when they took over power, to be responsible, to listen to their citizens, to take the issue of citizens at large. But also, it also goes to say our problems are corruption related problems, which has also destroyed the whole fabric of being Zimbabwean. So they need
mm.
to address this element in our education sector, in our health sector, in all facets of our life. But it also goes to a government, to a state that is responsible towards the bigger development of our country. Thank you very much, Yvonne, and I hope we are going to work to ensure that COVID is defeated. Thank you.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Samuel. May God bless you. And thank you for gracing our show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. We also want to thank the R2's leader for coming through. Um, Mr. Take Momhlanga, the Secretary for Young Teachers in the Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe. We were talking schools reopening. Are we ready? This is a conversation that should keep going. Let's be talking and let's be coming up with strategies in our different areas of influence so that we make this work for our children. Our children are going to be out there. We need to ensure that they're safe. We also need to ensure that the teachers are safe. Artus sent out a letter to the Ministry of Education earlier on, and they were simply saying, pay us a living wage and we are going to be able to go back to work. According to the letter, they say that we still are incapacitated. So our teachers are still struggling and they'll still find it very difficult on the 15th to leave home and go to their different schools. Let's just look at the letter together and just listen to their concerns a little bit so that all of us begin to take interest in the things that are happening. So let me just try to open that page for us so that we can all see what is being said by the teachers union, the rural teachers union in particular. So this is what they say. Amalgamated Rural Teachers Union of Zimbabwe. So this letter serves to remind you that ATU's members are still incapacitated to report back to schools in the imminent phase of the opening of schools. This incapacitation comes on the backdrop of the poor salaries that teachers have been receiving, which are below the poverty datum line and against the spirit of the agreed USD $520 salary. The plight of teachers has been worsened by the COVID-19 pandemic-induced lockdown that has heightened the suffering of teachers and relegated their position to the periphery of the society. Our members can no longer sustain a decent livelihood due to the nature of the paltry salaries they've been receiving from the employing authority. All manner of a decent and dignified life that have been eroded, and it is worrying that the employer has chosen to act in bad faith and not recognize the challenges that our members are facing in their daily lives. Such forms of labor injustice goes against the nature of labor relations between employer and employee. The salary disparities between members of the security forces and our members is a serious cause for concern and needs to be urgently addressed because all civil servants deserve equal and fair treatment. This is the letter that our choose has written to to the Ministry of Education, because at the end of the day, yes, schools are reopening, but are the teachers able to go and teach our children? So this has been Frank Talk with me, Yvonne. Joining me in studio was Samuel Gwenzi from the Zimbabwe National Students Union, Tek Momhlanga, the Secretary for Youth Teachers in R2s. We also failed to get through to Mr. Zunde, coming through from the Progressive Teachers Union of Zimbabwe due to network challenges, but all the same, I'm sure we had a good conversation and we were able to break it down for ourselves to say, where are we exactly? Are we ready? Hopefully, we will have and we will be able to bring you some more of our guests to talk about this issue of reopening of schools. We are about a week away from reopening. Are you ready as parents? Let's have, if you want to come on to the show to give us your view, please feel free to contact me on email. Or on Facebook, rather. Let's use Facebook. You can contact me on Facebook at Zim Daily, and we'll be able to get back to you, send you the links, and so that you can join this conversation. It's going to be more fun when we all begin to shape the narrative of the information that we want to receive. My name is Yvonne Muchaka, and it has been a pleasure having you. To the crew in the studio with me, have yourselves a wonderful rest of day, and may the good Lord continue to cover you. Muchengetedzwe, muprotectwe in this season of COVID-19. And let's remember to mask up always. Aina upera COVID. Ichiko.